This award lets me know that
Bonjour, comment ça va? Et toi, ça va très bien. Nia, hola, bienvenue, Wan Ying, bienvenidos, bienvenita, benvenuta, namaste, and welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemmological storyteller. And each and every week, I get the magnificent opportunity to take you on an adventure. What I do is I take the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry, and I put them all together into a story. What I've learned over almost 2 decades and learn more and more each and every week is that many of the same attributes, the same qualities, the same characteristics that we so highly value in gemstones and precious metals, we can find in ourselves. We can find in the things that we do all around us. So what I do is I take those gem stories and use them as a template, as an inception point, as a bridge to help people, to empower people, and in many cases, remind people to take time to discover the value of your own story, of how you resonate with people, how you interact with the light. This is my home. Welcome, bienvenue. This is my home, my second home in France. So this is here. I was going to do it outside, but they doing a lot of yard work and too much noise. So voila, I am here. I am home. In a little town called Telle, T-A-L-L-E-R. So this is my second home away from home. And so bienvenue, welcome to all of you. Thank you, Barbara. When I was going to do this show, this is not the show that I had originally talked about doing last week. I was going to do a show, and I will still do that show with my brother and my friend, Charlie Jones. We'll do it next week, talking about the continuation of the Infinity Stones. Next week will be on the Mind Stone. But something really profound happened to me this week that I had to call Charlie. I was like, Charlie, I gotta do something else this week. And of course, Charlie being wonderful, thank you, Charlie. He said, okay. But also what he said to me in one of my comments, and thank you for all the people who had wished me happy birthday, all the comments, all the GIFs, all the funny emojis. Thank you so much. I cannot tell you how moved and touched I am that I have so many people in my life, friends, family in my life. And this is kind of that happening. Charlie said to me in one of his posts that I had been through a lot of, in his words, and it's true, I've been through a lot of shit in my life. And there's no other way to say it. Sugar, honey, iced tea. I have been through so much, and not as a comparison to some of you who are going through things and continue to go through things, but it made me think about just how much I had gone through. And he said it to me on the day that, it's on my birthday, October 8th. And I was in Spain. And one of the wonderful things about visiting Europe, and for some reason I have seen to every time I come to Europe, I always find I'm fascinated with the churches. And I'm not necessarily a religious person myself. In fact, I go to churches more in Europe than I have in the United States, to be honest with you, but not just because I'm not even Catholic. It's the beauty, just the unbelievable beauty of the cathedrals, or in Francais, the cathédrales that you see in France and in England and in Spain. And this is in Spain. This is a church. In fact, I have the church now. This is the church called the Santa Maria. The Santa Maria. I won't try to de la Annunzio el de Mancio. That's the name of this church. And when you walk into this church, it is just the thing that gets me about churches here in Europe is we're talking about churches that are 12th century. In Tele, there's a church that's 11th century. This is a 16th century church in Spain. And when you walk in, it's like you can feel the presence of God. As soon as you walk in the door, you can see it. You can feel every part of it. And you think about how many hundreds of years had gone by, and every step every step you take, you see, you think about how many people have sat in these pews, how many people who have prayed to God during all the wars. I mean, you talk about 15th, 16th century. Think about all the wars that have happened, not just in France, but in Spain and England, all those wars and all the people who found solace at this church, even though the world was going apart. And as I was sitting there, and I want to give props to my PR manager, everything here in Europe, Catherine, Francoise, Christiane Sadi, for taking all these pictures. Obviously, I don't have a long selfie stick. So Catherine, you want to take these pictures. Thank you so much. And it was funny that she took this picture because I was in this church, other than Catherine, all by myself. And I was just sitting there looking at the altar, looking at this huge, unbelievably beautiful, ornate statue, just the whole part of the, you can tell you how much I go to church, just the altar of this church. And the question I asked myself is, how did I get here? How did I get here? And I was just filled with a profound sense of joy and blessing and just almost disbelief. And so when Charlie said that I had been through so much sugar honey iced tea in my life, I thought about it. And I went to that church. I had this conversation with God, and I always pray and thank God for just getting me here. But this time it was just different. It was different. And a lot of people will ask me in my journeys, how did you get there? Especially people who know my story or have seen me along the different chapters in my story. How did you get here? How did you go from 32 years ago, I was living in a dumpster in the city of Chicago. I was living in the streets. I didn't have friends. I didn't have family. I had family, but I didn't have contact with them. In fact, someone asked me, were you in contact with your family? No, I was literally by myself because of insecurities, because I was ashamed. There were so many different things that had happened to me to be there. And the question that I was asking God as I was sitting there looking at this altar and feeling this utter gratefulness to be 63 years of age, no medication, and here I am in Spain. And the question is, how did I get there? How is this my scene? How did I sit on this beach? And this is in the Haribiba. I know I'm pronouncing the name. This is on the Spanish side. How am I sitting on this spectacular beach on this perfect day? Sorry, people in Chicago. It was about 85, 90 degrees that day. People were out. The beach was just pristine. How did I get here? How did I get to the point of eating wonderful foods? This is in Spain, and you come to Spain. France's food is magnificent. Spain is not that far behind. Oh my God, it's just simple elegance. So how I discovered that sangria comes in blanche and rouge. So I had to have both. So I know some of you thinking he is straight up an alcoholic. No, I'm not, but I understand how my mother got there because the wine. In fact, here you go, right here. I won't do one right now, but the question is, how did this happen? And people always wonder. They see what I do. They see the place I've gone and teaching and visiting. Next week I'll be in London. I'll be in London in England. And how did it happen? This is calamari, and this was some type of Spanish cheese wrapped up, which was just absolutely to die for. So how? France is on the other side. France is here. I'm in Spain. Here I am. Voila. So the question is how? How did I come from a completely dysfunctional household, all the things, the insecurities, the anger, the whole concept of Darth Vader being inside of my heart, mind, and soul? How did I get to be here? This is in a building, a fortress, literally called the Le Emperador, where this was the king, was Charles V. So we're talking about this structure was built somewhere in the 11th century. That's how. So how did someone who have experienced all those things, the sugar honey iced tea, as Charlie talked about, how did they get here? And the reason why I say this to you is because this is what you have to do. You have to sit back and think to yourself where you are, where you were, and where you want to be. And the only way that happens is you have to understand your story. You have to get to understanding what it is that you were thinking about in your mind. As I say to you guys all the time, the book that changed my life was As a Man Thinketh, because it says it. When I remember the day sitting in that dumpster right next to DePaul University, those of you from Chicago, right on Jackson Boulevard, sitting in that dumpster. I remember that day, the light, there was a hole in the top of the cover of the dumpster, and a light was coming through, and that was my night light. Actually, it was actually from the street light. There was a light coming through, and I was reading it, and that's when I read and really began to understand the importance of that book, because in that book it said, though your circumstances may be uncongenial, you shall not remain so, but perceive an idea and strive to reach it. You cannot travel within and stand still without, which means that when you really break it down, which means is whatever is inside of you, whatever that thought is inside of you, that thought can be manifested. You see all types of affirmations and things like that, but you have to really embody it. And the way you embody it is through a story. That's it, the story. You have to understand the importance of story. Everybody talks about stories. You all of us have heard that everyone has a story. You read it all the time, but for so many people that I have found in my travels, so many people understand that they have a story inside of them, but either they don't know how to tell their story, or they don't really understand the importance of their story. So as I was sitting there talking, having this conversation with God, thinking about how I got there, thinking about it, hit the lottery, I didn't get the homeboy hookup. It was a combination of things that happened, and many of those things that happened manifest were inside of me years before I even became homeless. And as in the last, I've been coming to France since 2015. In all these years that have passed, what is happening is the things that were inside of me grew over and over and over and over and over again. And Toastmasters was a huge, those of you who are my Toastmasters friends who are watching today, hey, Dion, I know Dion's watching, thank you, Dion, and Chelsea and Chantel, so many, Eric, so many people watching who are my Toastmaster friends. This is what I talk about when I say how Toastmasters has changed my life, because what Toastmasters did, and Barbara Becker, of course, who helped me create the story. What Toastmasters did was allowed me to not only have that story inside of me, but to be able to tell that story, how to put it together into a story. Because as I say to you over and over and over, this show will be 3 years next month. 3 years officially. I started this show. Barbara and I started this show together 3 years ago. And what I always say is that nothing has value without a story. I always have to stop and pause and let you think about that. Nothing has value without a story. That's the only way. Without a story is you can't get to value. You cannot get to value. And the reason why I say that is because many of us feel lost. I remember that feeling. There's not a day, not a week that I don't remember not having nothing, having absolutely nothing. And when you understand, when you have been homeless or when you have been through a situation in your life where you have absolutely nothing, the greatest things that comes, if you survive, if you're blessed enough to survive that happening, the greatest thing that comes out of that experience is the concept of value. When I make my transition, that's what I want on my obituary, that Barry spent his life not only understanding and unpacking the word value, but helping people discover the value of their stories, because that's what it's about. Because I have experienced homelessness, I appreciate everything. Toilet paper. Oh. I know some of you guys are like, what? But it's when I see Charmin commercials, it's not a commercial. It's like a trailer for a movie, like, ta-da! I mean, toilet paper, having food, having something to eat, having a warm place to sleep and lay my head, having people in my life. 32 years ago, I had no one. My mother didn't even know where I was. She thought I was dead, to be honest with you. I hadn't contacted her in 10 years. And to have so many people write and call me and tell me happy birthday, Barry, I'm trying not to even get emotional now. It was spectacular. So what I wanted to do today is literally take the time to talk about how to discover the power of your story. And it starts with, as I say in my opening every week, an inception point. Remember that movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, where the movie, the movie's old, so you should have already seen it. But if you didn't, what the story is about is literally, if you take the concept of it, is if you take a thought and plant it deep enough in someone's mind, that thought will grow. He said in his little monologue, he was saying that the greatest virus in the world is an idea. So an inception point, when you look at the definition, is the act or process or instance of beginning. Think about that. An inception point is the act or process of instance of beginning. Now, there's lots of synonyms for the word inception. There's origin, there's source, there's root, but the word that I like the best is origin. Because an origin applies to things or person from which something is ultimately derived. It often leads to causes operating before. That's the key thing. Before the thing itself comes into being. Everything that you see me doing in my life, and if you follow me at Facebook, you've seen my adventures, you've seen all the places I've gone and things of this. Understand, this came from way back. This came from, and I said it earlier in a few shows ago, when I grew up, I wanted to be Johnny Quest. I wanted to be Marlon Perkins on the Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom. I wanted to be on Rat Patrol and all these adventures, Star Trek, the undersea adventures of Jacques Cousteau. Now, when I sailed across, it took a boat across from France to Spain. I remember a scene that Jacques Cousteau was in, where he was in the Atlantic Ocean, when I was in Corsica, in the Mediterranean, when I was 6 and 5 years old, that manifests now. Operating before the thing itself comes into being. So it's a story. It's a story that you have to tell yourself. It's not about how many clicks you get or how many views you saw. It's literally about that would be wonderful, and please subscribe and please should tell your friend. But ultimately, what I want people to get out of this show each week, it's the story that you tell yourself. That's how you get to value. So today's show is how to discover the value of your story. So let's go back and like I said, next week we will talk about the Mind Stone and we will continue on with our journey. But today I wanted to basically let you know, one, just how supremely blessed I am and just grateful for the life that I have. This is beyond magnificent. I pinch myself, not even daily, sometimes every other hour. Because I can't believe it. I can't believe that I am here. So let's start from the beginning. When you see an opal, what do you see? You just see a beautiful stone. You see a range of different colors, the blues, the reds, the greens. You don't think about what the opal's molecular structure is. Unless you've been watching my show for a while. You don't think about it. It's literally, the opals are made from rainwater. Raindrops is what makes opal. When you talk about rain that was coming down millions of years ago, and those water droplets seep through the rocks, and the rocks was made up of what? Silicon dioxide. And as the rocks was watering down through the cracks, those rocks, the water built up and it created these spherical shapes. And those shapes started building up over time, over millions and millions of years. And when the light shines through those spaces and hits that water, it refracts the light. You don't think about that when you see that. All you know is that it's a pretty stone. That's who we are. That's who each one of us are. We don't really know what something is until you understand where it comes from. How was it made? How was it processed? What makes one opal made of the same thing? What makes one opal this color, and then you have another opal this color? Why? Why? Was the water different? No. Was the silicon dioxide different? No. It depended on the way it was put together. The basic structure was there. And when you really understand, if that works in gemmology, if it works with basic things, then it has to work for us. The concept has to be the same. As I tell you all the time, science is not just, there's democratic science and Republican science and independent science. There's not United States science or French science or Spanish science. There's science. The periodic table, that 118 elements, that goes for everybody. So the concepts of it has to work. And when you really look at it, then you go back to the 7 elements of storytelling. And I know, we're going way back to the beginning of when we started this show. This is what changed my life, understanding the 7 elements of storytelling. So for those of you, take a few seconds, get a piece of paper and a pencil. If you haven't got it before, this concept is what got me to here today. And of course, through God, just that God spoke to me in this way. People always say, you didn't mention God. God is everywhere. It is everywhere. All I'm talking about is just one aspect of God that he spoke to me. Voila. 7 elements of storytelling. The first thing, sound. What did I tell you sound is? Sound is that initial direction that you have to take in your story. Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself going? No matter how far-fetched it seems. Think about it. 32 years ago, did you ever think would I have ever even imagined living in France? Ever? I mean, I didn't have a place to go to the bathroom. I'm living in a dumpster. My neighbors were rats and roaches. And so literally for a whole entire year in Chicago in the winter of 1992. And yet here I am. Why? Because my initial sound was the things that I watched on TV when I was a kid. When I saw Marlon Perkins and National Geographic, all these different places, I knew in my head there was something in my spirit. That's the direction I wanted to take. So when you look at an opal, you have to understand that opal there's a certain direction. That's why that opal looks the way it looks. When I was on the French side, when I was Hyundai is the southwestern port of France, and right across, you can swim across, if you're a good swimmer, you can swim across 2 minutes, 5 minutes across, there is France. There is Spain, sorry. And when I looked across that harbor, I saw that tower. And I was told that is Spain. Right over there is Spain. So I knew wherever I went, that's where I wanted to be. Something spoke to me. That was the direction. That's sound. Sound is the initial direction that you have decided to take in your life, whatever that may be. I want you to understand this works for anything or anybody. The sound. Passion. Whatever you're into, whatever your thing is that you want to be. I don't care if it's cooking. I don't care if it's cleaning. I don't care if it's driving a bus. Passion. En français, passion. You gotta feel it. It's gotta be a part of who you are. Those of you who are into food, and I've been sending pictures about food, I'm not a foodie. You know, my good friend Alan Lloyd from Jamaica, Queens. Hey, Alan. Alan is a foodie and he talks about the ingredients and everything else. I just eat the food. But I know that the people who make the food are passionate. This is my friend Terry. And Terry and I, we played together. He was my teammate, and I didn't get a chance to show you last week. He was my teammate in the Pétanque championships. And I love him. I love him as a brother because we went in there together. We went in there and we played everybody. I mean, there were so many different people that we played, and it was, and all of them believed in it. They believed in that sport. This ball wasn't just, I don't keep pétanque balls too far from. This is not just a stainless steel sphere. This is a representation of who they are. And I did that whole show about the spiritual aspects of metal. This is stainless steel with a hint of chromium, iron and carbon with a hint of chromium, making stainless steel. And that's what all those people played with. They played with passion. When you hold this stone in your hand, and when you have just to let you know, opal comes in a whole variety of color. But when you have red, blue is very common, but when you have red and green and opal, especially red, it takes it to a whole nother level. So passion is taking your story and understanding how you feel about it. When you think about cooking, when you think about cleaning, when you think about those of you who are nurses or healthcare workers, there's a passion to what you do, to your story. And if you don't do it, who's going to do it? Who will ever make, my friend Stefan, who will ever make bread? If Stefan doesn't make bread, the way he makes it, organic bread, who's going to make it? the hero. You have to be the hero in your story. There's only two. If you ever watch Star Trek in your life, you know there was Kirk, Spock, Bones, McCoy was Bones, Scotty, Uhura, and everybody else was just a character. You have to become a hero in your own story. You have to see it. You have to see it, and you have to imagine where you are going to be. You have to understand the potential of it. You can't just look at this opal and say, it's just a rock. It's not. Oh, it's just silicon dioxide. It's not. It's more. Oh, I'm just a mechanic, or I'm just a mom, or you can't say that. You have to see yourself as a hero in your own story. Maybe the book is only 3 pages long, but that's your story. You're the hero in that. So when I came to play Patonk, and I told you I got beat like someone, oh my God, like there was a warrant for my arrest. Everybody came to beat me. But that's not how I was in my mind. This is the shirt I wore. And when I came with the mindset of what I was going to do. That I represented the United States of America, and I was going to play Patonk. Okay. And I was going to do my best. And even though we got beat as badly as we got beat, okay, again, we won the first round. Everything else did, but we never shut out. It was never 13 zip or fanny. We played the game. We played with our heart and our soul, and I played because in my mind, I knew that this was a chapter in my book, that I was the hero in my story. And it didn't matter that Terry and I was going to play this game, and we were going to give it our absolute best. You have to become that. You have to become, in order to, for me, that's how I got from being where I was as a homeless man with coming from a dysfunctional household. How does that happen? How does that same person 30 years later, sitting on this breathtaking beach, completely at peace with the world, completely understanding the blessing that I have received? That happens because you see yourself as the hero in your story. You have to see that. You have to take that and believe that in yourself, that if you don't do it, it's no different than the comic books. That's why I always use comic books in these shows, is because you see it all the time. Batman, Superman, Iron Man, Wonder Woman all have to come to that understanding of who they are as people, who they are, what superpower they have, and how they're going to use that. That's the decision they have to make. Just like you have to make the decision to leave for a few minutes and come back, and we will continue on when we get to the other side. So we're back. So yes, Barbara's commercials are always, let's just give her a hand. Her commercials are always on time, because when you think about when a woman decides to create a business, really anybody, but when a woman, because of all the challenges women go through in their life, they have to become the hero in their story. They have to be the one. They have to be Wonder Woman. And someone told me, maybe not every day, maybe not all the time, but you have to see yourself as that. You have to see yourself as that hero, no matter where you're at in your life. He dreams filled with, I'm trying to think of The part as a man thinker. Here's a youth hard pressed by poverty and labor, confined long hours in an unhealthy workshop, unschooled and lacking all the arts of refinement. But she dreams of better things. She thinks of intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. That's the hero. The next element, and you should know this by now, the next element is the antagonist. You do not have a story without the antagonist, meaning that if you have not gotten your butt beat on numerous occasions, you don't have a story. You don't understand. You don't understand what it means to be on the other side. When I said to you that I appreciate everything because of what I've gone through, that's because of the antagonist. I tell people all the time, the worst thing that I've ever gone through in my life, worse than even than the Marine Corps and war, was being homeless. And at the same time, the greatest thing that I've ever experienced in my life was homelessness. I don't recommend it as a therapy for everybody, but that's what God took me to. That's where I had to go in order to get to where I'm at today. The antagonist is the obstacle. It is the thing that you have to overcome. Whoever cut this stone saw the beauty of this dark opal and had to cut it in such a way where it manifests. You still saw the colors. Every lapidary, every person who cuts a gemstone has the antagonist. How do you cut it? How do you shape that gemstone in such a way where that gemstone still manifests the colors that he or she saw it have it as a potential? That's the antagonist. And when I went through here, this trip, I went to two antagonists. First antagonist, I drove in Europe for the very first time. Well, I drove before, but a long distance. And so I had to drive on the French highway. And first of all, the roads here are just so smooth. But I was in a little car. I was with a stick shift. I haven't driven a stick shift in a long time. And here I am in this foreign country. I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I had to drive over like 125 miles. At speed, because they're really racing. This is like almost like the Autobahn. They're all doing 80, 90 miles an hour, no problem. So how do I do that and still have the confidence that I can get there safe? That's the antagonist. The other antagonist I had to get to actually happened when I was in Haradita, which is the Spanish part. This is the church. I'm in the church I told you about. I got to the other side. We got to Spain. And as we were walking, I noticed the elevation of the church had to be pretty high. We're at the bottom. I'm looking up thinking, now, how the heck am I going to get up there? And all I'm thinking about is someone asked me, Alan Lloyd asked me, how come people in Europe don't get fat? That's because they're walking everywhere. You walk that day, we walked like 14,000 steps. Nothing. It's nothing in Europe to walk that many steps. And it was so amazing that as I was walking, as I was thinking, how the hell am I going to get up there? Because I knew it had to be at least 2 or 4 stories up. Out of nowhere, there was an elevator. That's the elevator. It was just this concrete structure. And I looked up and I said, I think that's an elevator. There was no signs. It was just bell. It was there. That was the elevation. That was the antagonist that I had to overcome in order to get to the church. Understand that everything this show is about came from the inspiration that I felt that God told me that I had to tell this story. And the only way I would have been able to receive that message is if I figured out a way to get to that church. In this elevator, there was no signs that said elevator this way, like it would be in the United States, go up this way. It was just there. And this is the view from the top. Oh, here's the top of the elevator. It was literally 3 stories up. 3 stories up. This is the view. I would not have been able to see this view had I not overcome the antagonist of getting up to that high. That's what we all have to go through. Every single day. What food am I going to make today? How am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do in my relationships? That is the antagonist. That is the thing that you have to overcome, and you have to see it as a story. Because once you see it as a story, that's how you can understand that you can control it. You're the one who can, even though it seems like the butt whoopings are coming from everywhere, you have to step back and say to yourself, as the hero of your story, what are you going to do? What gifts, what talents, what skills do you have in yourself that allows you to deal with that? That old saying that God won't give you, will only give you what you can handle. That because God already understands. He already understands your powers. He already knows that you're Batman. He already knows that you're Wonder Woman. You don't know. You don't know how it's possible to come over. What am I going to do? That's why I said you don't have a story without the antagonist, because the antagonist is how you figure out what your gifts are. I was walking. Then once we got up to the top, everything was basically downhill. It wasn't just downhill. It was downhill on steep streets, on cobblestone. And those of you who have ever walked on real cobblestone, it's not the most comfortable place to surface to walk on. So here I am, 63 years old, and my old butt was walking up steep hills, cobblestone streets. But in order to do that, I had to overcome. I had to remember other days in my life where I had to walk up those things. What would you do? Do you quit? Do you stop? Or do you understand that this is part of the story? And if you overcome this part of the story, if I overcome these streets, then the gift my blessing will be at the other side. I don't know what that is, but I have lived in these stories long enough to know that there is a blessing on the other side. I don't have to wonder anymore. I don't have to question whether or not. I see all these posts about, people talking about God. God is always in your life. You the one that forgot. You the one that forgot, because he's already shown you the things that you had to go through that you overcame before. This is just another thing. That's why they keep making Superman, Batman, Iron Man, Wonder Woman, Avenger movies, because there's always an obstacle that you have to overcome. The next obstacle, the next bill, the next job promotion, the next thing that you got to do. That is your antagonist. Awareness. Awareness is the most beautiful of all the elements in my mind. Awareness is when you understand why you are here. You understand how everything in your life has led you to this moment. Everything that has this gemstone is millions of years old. Millions of years old. Just the process of rainwater. But this is awareness, is when an opal is not aware, but an opal is an opal because that's what it is. That's what it is. It's not a ruby. It's not a sapphire. It's not a diamond. It's not an emerald. It's an opal. You have to become aware of who you are, no matter what that may be. It's you. So when I'm standing in front of this fortress, those holes that you see, those are not just construction holes or places. Those are cannonballs. Those are cannonballs. Those are the effects of cannonballs hitting that building over and over and over. Look at the size of the building. Look, it's a hotel now. It's a luxury hotel now. So think about how this is a 12th century structure that has been for hundreds of years. This structure has survived everything. Imagine that being you. Imagine that. No, this is hundreds. Yes, this is a 12th century, 11th century. But guess what? I'm 63. And those cannonball marks are the same marks that's inside of me. Those are the same marks that I have gone through, that you have gone through in your life, that all the ass whoopings, all the punishments, all the disappointments, all the heartaches, all the breakup, friends letting you down, people that you thought were down for you, all those are the marks that's inside of you. And yet here I am. Here I am. And I stood there like that because I wanted to invoke my hero, Napoleon, El Emperador. El Emperador, because that's what you have to go through. And when you understand what awareness is, that is the moment when you realize that this is not something that you can do. This is something that you have to do. That's what awareness is. I had to see this. Everything that has happened to me in my life happened in order for me to not only see it, but to appreciate the value of it. Appreciate that I am here. If I died tomorrow, not wishing anything, but if today is my last day, this is what I see. These are one of the memories that I am going to see in my mind. The last thoughts I'm going to have is to understand that once upon a time, I saw that. I experienced that. I felt the sun on my face and the beautiful blue water. The water is that blue. This is not screenshot or Photoshop. That's the water. And the only way I got there is getting through the antagonist and becoming aware of how I got there. Seeing structures like that, understanding that this building has been around for at least 100 years. At least 100 years. Just simple shops and cafes. Beautiful. Look at the street. That street goes down, and that street was just that steep. That street was just that. And we went down that street and came back up. And when I came back up, I was like, I survived. I made it. That's awareness. Transformation. Transformation is when you realize something that you have done in your life has touched other people. The person that you are, the things that you've learned, the things that you've experienced in your life has touched other people. So when I was sitting there waiting on this long line, and I was the only African American, I was the only person of color on a line. I don't know, there had to be at least 100 people there waiting for the boat. And it was so funny to me because when the boat came up, the first thing I noticed was the name of the boat was called the Marie Louise. Marie Louise was Napoleon's second wife. Yeah, she was the one that took him to the next level, Marie Louise. And we're sitting there, and I'm standing with all these people, and it was speaking. And in this part of the world, they speak 4 languages. They speak English, they speak French, they speak Spanish, and they speak God, I can't think of the name right now. Oh my God, I can't think of the name of it. It'll come back to me in a second. And all these people are speaking different languages. And here I am. Here I am in this courtyard with all these different nationalities. And I'm the American. Transformation. I was there literally telling them, showing them, being a representative of not just the United States of America, but as a African American, someone who has a Marine Corps tattoo on his arm, and they saw that and they asked me questions and they talked to me. And I know that in many cases, I was the first person or one of the few times they had a conversation with an American. Yeah. And that's what it is. That's what transformation is. What are you doing in your life? What is the story that you're telling? When the person who is riding this bike, a Harley Davidson, an American product, and here I am as an American, as a Marine, not Army, but a United States Marine, that meant something. That meant something. That's what transformation is. Taking your art, taking who you are, taking your energy, taking the things you believe in, and showing other people what that not only means to you, but what the difference, the beauty of what you see, how that translates to other people. Just like that opal. That's the beautiful thing about gemstones. Here you have one substance, not just opal, but gemstones and all. How is it that one substance can touch so many people? So many people. That's transformation. That person bought all those bikes there, all Harley Davidsons, all of them. That's transformation. That's what it means. And just like that works for Harley, that can work for your story. That can work for your story. When standing there, because that even though I just got beat so badly in the contest, but when I was there, standing there, watching and playing with these guys, this is in Spain. What I had already experienced empowered me to play with those guys at this contest and be not only to play, but they saw my different style. And there was a level of respect. There was a letter of respect, not because of just how I was playing, because I understood my story. I understood how I see the game, how I played the game. That's transformation. That's what you have to understand about your own story. How do you take that story, what you've gone through in your life, and show other people what's possible? I never, ever, 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 ever forget the fact that I was homeless once upon a time, ever. Because of that, I appreciate every person that talks to me, every person that shares food and wine and stories with me, because I understand that not only do I understand their story, but I understand the importance of how their story has affected my story. And I may never meet those people again in my life, but forever, I will remember that moment. That's what transformation is. Understanding that. I knew that even though when I played with them in Spain, I played better. Why? Because of what I had already experienced in France. When I was there practicing for the tournament, I was able to take that experience and use it in a different place, in a different area, in a different country, to use that experience. That's what you have to do in your story. When you begin to discover the value of your own story, all those things come together. It's like music. It's like you're creating your own story. You have to see that. You have to see that in your presentations, whether it be at the office, whether you're talking to your children. Imagine when I go back to my niece and nephew, Boogie and Gianna, Bryson and Gianna, think about who they'll see their Wabi is. That their Wabi I show them these pictures, I tell them their stories, and now I'm planting seeds inside of them. That maybe not tomorrow, the next year, but one time in the future, sometime in the future, they're going to think to themselves when they go to Europe, when they see something, my Uncle Wabi did this. Oh, this is what my Uncle Wabi did. That's the power of stories. And they will see the world in a completely different way because of what I saw. And that's transformation. That's the importance of stories. And lastly, you have the sound. The sound is what resonates. The sound is what you see. When you see an opal, that's a sound. You're not going to, whether you own it or not, you know that it exists. When I was there at the church of Santa Maria, I waited. It was so funny. We was in the courtyard, and I just happened to look at my watch, and it was like 2:57. It was 2:57. And I said to myself, if I sat here and we sit here and wait, the bells should ring. The bell should ring. And I knew it should ring, not just because it was a bell and clock, just because for me, it was almost like a confirmation from God. It was like I took it as a confirmation of God, that everything that I was experiencing, that right, God would ring that bell exactly at 3:00, and literally at 3:00 on the dot, the bell started ringing, bong, 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 and it just resonated through me. It just resonated to me that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. that all the stuff that I had gone through happened. And God's confirmation that it was good was in the ringing of those bells. So when you see an opal, from now on, when you see an opal, understand that this is something that took millions of years to develop. And then make the extrapolation to yourself. Well, no matter how old you are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, you are the manifestation of years of experience, years of elements. Last week we talked about impurities. Think about all the things that you have done, the things that are not a part of your molecular structure, but you decided to go to school. You decided to take that training. You decided to marry this person. You decided to have these children. And those are the inclusions. Those are the things that make you different. That's how you tell your story. That's how you begin to discover the value of your story, of who you are, once you start taking little pieces. And the thing about it, the most beautiful, elegant way about the whole thing is literally being able to just see it everywhere. Once you start understanding the power of stories, you can see it in everything that you do. Look at around your house. Look at where you're living. Look at what you're driving. Look at your body. And you know, once you understand what that story is, you know that you can become anything you want. You and I are different than this. This is silicon dioxide. That's all this is. And there was something inside it that gave it that green, that made it manifest a green color. This is the same. All these opals are the same exact structure. And what makes them different, what makes them completely unique, and every opal is completely unique, even though it's the same thing, is what? It's the story. It's the story. That's what I want you to get out of today. That's what I wanted to let you know, that, and I will continue to tell these stories. And this can be used in any gemstone, just like it can be used with any person. Who you are as a person is a unique and beautiful story. And the most important person that has to understand that story and learn how to tell that story is you. So your homework assignment, as always, is to just sit back, have a conversation with whatever God or whatever is special and holy in your life. One, appreciate where you are, and then ask yourself where you're going to go from now. What is your sound? What is the initial direction that you're going to take? And when you do it from an honest point of view, don't put yourself down. Yeah, your mom did. Don't put yourself down. Just understand, this is where I'm at. These are the conditions that I'm in. What am I going to do now? When you understand just how freeing that is, I guarantee you, you will be wherever you want to be in your life. May not come when you want it, but it will come. So that is my story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, thank you so much for the most magnificent birthday I've ever had in my life. Next week, I promise, Charlie and I will be on. We'll talk about the Mind Stone. But until then, my name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemmological storyteller. And I'm telling you live from Tele France. Au revoir, à the teller, and of course, voila.
Echemos fuego. Oye, llegar
Here's a gem bit. The next time you want to describe someone using a gemstone, be creative. Don't use a diamond or a ruby. Use an opal. The opulent songs of her voice, with its rich and captivating tones, mesmerize the audience. And if you add that little French accent, it gives it even more panache. Voila. Discover the value of your story.